installHUB.com. Streamlining your installations.
Another week, another podcast. We've made it to Friday, the 15th of September. A busy, busy week, so let's see what's been going on. Good news for M4 electric vehicle drivers. EV drivers using the M4 may feel more confident knowing that two of its motorway service stations have scored highly in a comparison of the nation's electric charging sites. A new study has revealed that Reading's M4 service station is the second best equipped in the whole of the UK to supply the increasing demand of electric car drivers. As late summer sun, festivals and the new football season sees more drivers taking to the roads, Scrap Car Comparison analysed service stations across the UK. Their study looked at the number of chargers available at each site, checked EV drivers' review scores and compared supply and demand at each station. Top of the league was Swansea's M4 Moto Services. Although this site enjoys only half the number of charging points as Reading, its perfect review score from EV users and less busy charging points gave it that winning edge. Reports say EVs could hit price parity with ICE vehicles in Europe next year. The report is by the Rocky Mountain Institute. On Thursday, they predicted battery costs should halve this decade from £151 per kilowatt hour in 2022 to between £60 and £90 per kilowatt, making EVs for the first time as cheap to buy as petrol cars in every market by 2030, as well as cheaper to run. Prices are steadily coming down as automakers invest in new battery chemistries, materials and software to make more efficient EVs. RMI's senior principal Kingsmill Bond told Reuters. According to RMI's analysts, the rapid growth of electric models in Europe and China implies that EV sales will increase at least sixfold by 2030 to enjoy a market share of 62% to 86% of sales. EV sales in the European Union jumped almost 61% in July versus the same month in 2022, accounting for 13.6% of all car sales. Now, as we know, people are purchasing the vehicles, but the infrastructure just isn't quite there. But it may be in the Midlands, as Midlands Council has given over £39 million towards electric vehicle charging points. The area will need 17,500 new charging points by the end of 2025 to meet the growing electric vehicle market. The money was a vital step to improving the regional infrastructure. The authorities bid for the money from the government's local electric vehicle infrastructure fund. Maria Machanosis, Chief Executive of Midlands Connect, said this is a vital next step in our efforts to improve electric vehicle charging infrastructure across the region ahead of the phase-out of sales of new diesel and petrol cars and vans by 2030. This funding will improve the lives of those living in the Midlands, particularly for those who do not have access to off-street parking and may struggle to charge their vehicles otherwise. In other EV news this week, Beijing has attacked the EU's anti-subsidies investigation into China's electric car industry as the Naked Protectionist Act and warned that it will have a negative impact on relations in its first official comments on the probe. China's commercial ministry vowed to protect the legitimate rights of its companies and reminded the EU of the strong presence and long history of European producers in the world's second largest economy. It is a Naked Protectionist Act that will seriously disrupt and distort the global automotive industry supply chain, including in the EU, and it will have a negative impact on China-EU economics and trade relations, the ministry said in a statement. But in America, the Biden-Harris administration has announced that applications are now open for the Electric Vehicle Charger Reliability and Accessibility Accelerator, which will provide up to $100 million in federal funding to repair and replace existing but non-operational electric vehicle charging infrastructure. These targeted investments will complement hundreds of billions in private sector investment, support good-paying jobs across the country, installing, maintaining and repairing EV infrastructure, and make current charging networks more reliable. The National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Programme is a £5 billion programme created by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and administrated by the Federal Highway Administration to help states build out EV charging sites. They stipulate a 10% set aside for grants to states, the localities, and require additional assistance to strategically deploy electric vehicle charging infrastructure. The first round of funding will focus on improving the reliability of the current network by repairing or replacing existing EV charging infrastructure. At the same time, the Biden-Harris administration is making larger-scale investments to deploy new charging stations. Speaking of money, BMW are set to announce a multi-million pound investment in their Oxford mini plant, which will take investment in the UK automotive sector to over £6 billion. Ahead of a visit to the mini plant in Oxford, Business and Trade Secretary Kemi Badcock had said on the 11th of September he hailed the success of the UK government's plan for automotive as the sector looked ahead to a bright future thanks to the over £6 billion of investment over the last 2 years. This comes as BMW are set to announce a multi-million pound investment to transform their Oxford plant, securing 4,000 high-quality jobs and strengthening the electric vehicle supply chain. The news follows extensive government engagement and support. The government is securing investments from industry by providing support for new plants and upgrades to ensure that the UK automotive industry thrives long into the future. Last week, Stellantis, makers of Vauxhall, Peugeot, Citroën and Fiat, announced the start of electric vehicle production after their £100 million investment to make their site in Elmer's Port their first globally dedicated solely to producing EVs. Other recent major investment also includes a landmark investment of over £4 billion from Qatar to build a new gigafactory supplying batteries, £1 billion for Nissan and AECS to create an EV manufacturing hub in Sunderland, and £380 million from Ford to make Halewood their first EV component site in Europe. On now to solar news. A public inquiry into the building of a solar farm the size of more than 88 football pitches on greenbelt land has begun. AGR for Solar Limited wants to build an 88-hectare solar farm near Stevenage, Hertfordshire, with a lifespan of 40 years. Planning permission was granted by the North Herts Council in November, but the decision was called in by Michael Gove, Secretary of State for Levelling Up. It is due to be held over 7 days. The scheme would include around 150,000 solar panels, as well as 22 transformer stations and 22 battery storage containers in the villages of Great Wymondley, Gravely and Little Wymondley. I mean, we do honestly believe here at installHUB, go hard or go home. And they're definitely going hard. Now, not going as hard, but still equally as impressive, a solar farm the size of around 50 football pitches near Billericay has been given the green light after a government inspector said that Basildon's council's own policies on climate change requires significant and urgent action. Boom Power's plans for its 25.6 Craze Hall solar farm to the east of Billericay is set to generate enough capacity to power around 12,500 households. Further solar news, Orsted has unveiled its first solar project in the UK, a 740 MW scheme with associated battery storage located in Nottinghamshire. One Earth Solar Farm is being co-developed with PS Renewables, subject to local and stakeholder consultation, which will begin later this month as part of the process for nationally significant infrastructure projects. A development consent order submission is planned for 2025. Orsted is taking a phase ownership in the project with the achievement of key milestones. PS Renewables and Orsted are targeting a commercial operation date for the One Earth Solar Farm before 2030. Big news this week in solar is that Octopus has doubled the cash splash for solar customers. Britain's second largest energy supplier has decided to double the export rates to 8p per kilowatt hour for its solar customers. Octopus Energy has witnessed an increase in its solar export customer base, with the total number of customers exporting electricity back to the grid doubling in the past year. The energy supplier attributes this growth to the popularity of Octopus Energy's intelligent and Go EV tariffs, which now cater to a customer base of more than 100,000 EVs. Rebecca Dibb-Simking, Chief Production Officer at Octopus Energy, said, "Thanks to our customers and their EVs helping balance the grid at night, we've continued to unlock savings to pass on to our greenest customers." And finally, ending on green tech news, the UK's climate tech sector could receive a £4 billion investment from Qatar as the Middle Eastern nation looks to establish a green energy research facility in southern England. Funded by the Qatar Foundation, the university-style facility will also be supported by a partnership with Rolls-Royce. As reported by the Sunday Times, £1.5 billion will be designated for the seed development of UK green tech startups, with the goal of creating new climate unicorns valued at over $1 billion. A project leader told the newspaper that it will be the MIT for UK energy transition. They added that the scheme will support the UK's ability to retain promising clean energy companies as they grow. The purpose is to scale up these projects to the level where they can be floated here in the UK rather than losing our best ideas overseas at their early stage. So that is all from me. I'll be back with you as ever next Friday. Remember, if you're an installer, allow us to streamline your installations. Head to installHUB.com and see how we can easily save you time and money. From everybody here at installHUB, as ever, you have a fantastic weekend.